25 JPs attended the tutorial designed to enlighten them on their responsibilities. Such tutorials are, however, not compulsory.
Like my boss said, you better come to my office one day,
said that
demanding.
the title Justice of the Peace had been
And
given
out
to
of
many
that,
who did not
with the
deserve
obvious
it. Said the
categorisation and
majority of
going,
people apply for the honour for business reasons,
insurance.
particularly those involved in the insurance, finance, real estate and car sales industries.
That was
Mr.
signed
Face believes that the
quickly.
system should
But
be
they had
reviewed
that
to ensure that only those
238,
with genuine
made about
reasons are made
200, about
JPs.
10 very
The
defined
administrator of the JP tutorial
Followed
service,
by,
Mr.
I
Phil
think,
Gray,
amendment
says
on-
justices of the peace provide a link between the community and the law, but admits that their role is now less important than it has been in the
I asked
past.
for it.
The erosion is most noticeable in New South Wales. 80% of all litigation in England and New Zealand is dealt with by JPs. A magistrate and a judge has to become a justice of the peace before they can commence their duties, irrespective of the degree of qualification. So in principle, the function of the JP is still very, very important in the community, but in point of fact it must be conceded the trend towards bureaucracy rather than JP jurisdiction is most noticeable.
The Matara bike rally was organised by the Newcastle Cycleways movement, and it was perfect biking weather. Warm, sunny, not too windy, and no sign of rain. The emphasis was on enjoyment and not on speed. The cyclists left the old railway station at Wallsend at 10:30 this morning and arrived at Civic Park just in time for lunch. They took the 15-kilometre east-west trunk cycleway, which is nearing completion. It was the first major event to take place on the new Wallsend-Jesmond section of the cycleway.
The tenants of Housing Commission properties don't pay water rates. They're charged only for excess water. Under the latest system, the Housing Commission sets that water limit at 365 kilolitres a year. Dr Howard Bridgman of the Water Board Consumers Committee says this amounts to a $1.6 million impost on New South Wales taxpayers, because normal water users would have to pay for all water. And he claims many Housing Commission tenants are better off than many of those who have to pay. However, Dr Patterson, chairman of the Water Board, says the free water only reflects savings made by the Commission under the Board's user pays scheme.
When user pay was introduced, the Housing Commission found that their rate reductions added up to about $600,000, and they felt it would be a fair thing to bear the cost of water to their tenants up to something like a comparable amount. Any fair dinkum landlord in the private sector did much the same thing, rather than simply ripping off the benefits of reduced rates.
In an effort to help raise the $14,000 needed to take the team overseas, throughout Matara, coach Ken Kaiser will be selling soft drinks in Civic Park. He is also urging KB United supporters to join the team on the American tour.
We'll be the first Australian team to play in America, and the San Diego Soccers have arranged an indoor tour which takes in 4 teams: the San Diego Soccers, Newcastle United, the Baltimore Blasts, and the Golden Bay Earthquakes. It'll be played over 2 nights. On the Thursday night, the 2nd of November, we'll have 1 game, and if we win that, we will play for $25,000 on the Saturday night, and if we lose on the Thursday night, then we'll be playing for $13,000 on the Saturday night.
So it's an important step for KB.
I think it's a very important step for KB and also for Australian soccer.
You're number 2 in the league and there's 7 matches left to play. How do you think KB will go?
I still feel that our chances are very good. It'll require that we win at least 6 of our next 7 games, and of course Preston must get beat.
12-year-old Wayne Stewart was back on his home course at Toronto today after his fine state title win yesterday. His present handicap is 15. He practices hard. He's getting plenty of opportunities during the school holidays, but Wayne says he's at it almost every day after school. Wayne beat 30 other competitors to win the Under-13 Championship with a round of 83, and judging by his determination, it won't be his last title win. Meanwhile, the Australian Schools Golf Championships continued at Newcastle. Teams events were played yesterday, while today the 36-hole Open Championships for boys and girls were contested. The girls' title was won by Queensland's Christine Spring with rounds of 82 and 83, while the boys' national champion becomes New South Wales' Kelvin Slade from Goulburn with a fine 73-72 won over par. The Australian Schools Championships will be continued at Maitland tomorrow and Nelson Bay on Thursday and Friday.
Bit nervous.
I feel terrific.
You feel terrific? You like the circus?
Yeah.
It was a big night for Matara Primary School. Last term the children studied all aspects of the circus and staged their own big top spectacular. But this time it was for real.
It's the first time we've been in a circus.
And I've never been to a circus before.
It's always been my dream to be in the circus, and has it really?
Yeah.
Then came the big moment. The lights were dimmed and up came Ashton's junior circus team. Spectators cheered them on as they made their way around the ring like true professionals. And there was a lot of support from the crowd, filled with mums and dads.
And to top it off, it's a tricky spot to get to. The Newcastle City Council puts on down showing they can no longer set up the rides inside the park. The showmen are trying to make the best of a bad lot, but as Paddy Sullivan explains, it's not an easy task.
We haven't had time to prepare it in the manner that we'd like to, but after all, let us face it, it's such a lonely sight. I wouldn't let my kids come down here of an evening, and I know other people won't.
It's all relative. It did have quite a bit of publicity. I think people knew about it. I mean, for example, the new Endeavour had less publicity and every ticket has sold out for the week for that. But you're probably right. I do think that many more thousands of dollars probably need to be spent every year on promotion because there are so many activities going on.
The offer has already saved almost 100 jobs, at least temporarily.
Last week, 60 retrenchment notices were issued at Rutherford and 37 at Matara. Those retrenchments have now been frozen until the Bradmills directors make a decision on the matter. Bradmills Chief Executive Mr Rod Hartley says the offer is being taken seriously, but adds that $13 million is well below the value of the three operations. A decision from Bradmills is expected early next week. The employees, who until the offer was made public looked certain to lose their jobs, have welcomed the news. Many, however, are treating it with some scepticism.
I think it's a good thing, but I don't know, if it's fair income or not.
It's still got to come about yet.
Very good, if it comes off.
Well, we heard that there's only more or less half of what's here now to be employed, because if a new company comes in, I think they're going to prune to try and make it more profitable.
But it's better than nothing, don't you think?
That's true, that's true. We've got to have something like that in Maitland.
The industrial officer for the New South Wales Labor Council, Mr Dave Wetherall, maintains that the offer is genuine. He is, however, unable to say that if the takeover bid is accepted, all employees, 600 at Rutherford and 140 at Matara, will be guaranteed work.
We're trying at this stage to make arrangements to have some discussion with the consortium early next week in an attempt to ensure that the employees' rights are adequately safeguarded should the consortium be successful.
Do you think the takeover is the answer for the Rutherford and the Matara mills?
Unfortunately, I think it's the only answer. If that bid by the consortium is not successful, the only other alternative is a massive increase in our unemployment in the Maitland district.
Robert Huchira took his bicycle with him when the family from Bratislava made their 50-minute flight across the Austrian border, landing in the village of Falkenstein. The family, including two children, aged 11 and 14, spent 2 years designing and making their patchwork balloon out of old raincoats. They flew at 2,000 metres using domestic propane gas to keep them up. Czech border guards fired flares in their direction, but the refugees landed safely in a field of grapevines. They've been granted political asylum.
There's 350 contestants in this tournament. It's the biggest ever held in Australia anywhere, and the participants will be karate, kung fu, taekwondo, aikido. They're coming from all over Australia and even as far as New Zealand to compete in this tournament.
Richard, obviously a very exciting tournament. Why is it that Newcastle has attracted the biggest in Australia?
Well, the tournament, we started earlier in Sydney, and in our first tournament we had 270 contestants. The next one in Bathurst, 250. The next one in Canberra, 200, and this one is 350 odd. And at the end of the year in Sydney at the finals, we hope to have 400 people competing.
Obviously the popularity in the martial arts goes without saying. Where do the winners from this weekend go to from there?
Well, the winner in the open event will be vying for an overseas scholarship, fully paid overseas scholarship. And you have some very top contenders for the Newcastle in the Newcastle area competing. Basil Gura will be competing, Greg Cairns, and they're really exciting competitors.
Alderman Cummings says the Prime Minister supports the establishment of a taxation office in Newcastle and has suggested funds from the Steel Industry Assistance Package be used for the proposed Science Museum Supernova. $3 million has also been pledged for the bicentennial Harbourside Park project, as Alderman Cummings explains.
Well, that was a very firm commitment because the state government have already given $3 million and they're going to match $3 million. Fortunately, we had the Minister for the Bicentennial with us, Mr Barry Cohen, and he starts the machinery in motion now, which I believe has to go through the state as well for that $3 million. So we can certainly get into the Harbourside Park now, because with the $3 million from state, $3 million from federal and $2 million that the council has saved and will be saving over the next 5 years, we can probably start straight away.
Was your trip to Canberra a serious attempt to do something for the City of Newcastle, or merely a political exercise considering the forthcoming elections?
It was a serious attempt, and it followed on Senator Button's visit here, and of course the steel package, the first time that the country has had a national steel policy, and the $45 million that was offered to Newcastle as part of the assistance to towns. I suppose in a way it's political, but it's just an ongoing thing as far as I'm concerned.
Police and ambulancemen were called to the scene of the accident on Warners Bay Road at about 9 o'clock last night. Police say the westbound bus collided with the Ford Capri and rolled down an embankment. 5 bus passengers were injured in the crash. They were taken to Belmont Hospital, treated for cuts and abrasions, and allowed to leave. Both drivers were injured in the accident. The driver of the car was thrown from his twisted vehicle onto this patch of grass. He is 31-year-old Leighton Robert Green of Warners Bay. The bus driver had to be carried out of the rear of the bus. He is 33-year-old Trevor Allen Duckworth. Both men are in serious condition in Royal Newcastle Hospital. Police are still investigating the cause of the accident.
On the one hand,
Mr Morris says the inquiry will provide the basis for the planning of Australian national transport into the 21st century. He says it's a fulfilment of an election promise and a joint initiative put forward by the states. The industry, Mr Morris believes, is facing a crisis.
In the road transport industry, we have a record rate of bankruptcies. Many of them are small businessmen, many of them self-employed. We have an escalating level of deficit, some $1,000 million a year being lost by the railways. Now, what we want to know is, why is this happening? Now, obviously there's something seriously wrong. How does it affect the average wage earner and businessman? Is it costing them? And out of that inquiry, we want to see a set of recommendations that we believe will lay down the guidelines for governments to take road transport and, to an extent, rail transport into the next century.
Now, the inquiry's terms of reference not only include the need to look at Australia's road freight industry, but the rail industry and the effect of competition between the two. It will also look at the involvement of heavy vehicles in road crashes. Mr Morris has stressed that he wants strong input from the public, and those involved in the industry will be approached for their view. Members of the inquiry will report to the Minister for Transport at the end of July 1984. So what does Mr Morris expect in the way of recommendations?
That kind of question prejudges the result of the inquiry. If you look at the terms of reference, it will look at the impact of regulation on the industry, whether it's desirable or undesirable. It'll look at the relationship of road and rail competition. It will look at the incidence of heavy vehicles in fatal road crashes. It'll look at the need for a national research program into the industry, but at the core of it is an examination of the economics and efficiency of the road transport industry and how that affects our economy now.
The 5th International Rail Track Conference began informally over lunch. In his opening address, Mr Farrens took the opportunity to speak on the virtues of steel sleepers, in the development of which BHP is a world leader. The delegates were told that steel sleepers have a continuous service record of more than 80 years, making them more economical in the long term than sleepers made from concrete or timber. Mr Farren predicts that during the next decade, the demand for steel sleepers will dramatically increase. After lunch, the formal part of the conference was launched with an address from Mr Kenneth Smith from the British Transmark Company. Mr Smith pointed out that the track is the most important part of any rail network and accounts for a significant part of the cost. The four-day conference was organised by the Australian Rail Track Association. Its purpose is to promote an exchange of ideas about the economic management of railways.
Rail track is the most important part of a railway system. It is the parallel in railway terms to the ordinary highway system in roads. And it's a very complicated system because it deals with a subgrade, with a formation, and then the sleepers, the fastenings and the rails. And each of the people that will be speaking at this conference will be dealing with some aspect of that or with economics and projections into the future.